ready.
On this episode of Buff in the Rough, we're going to talk to a legend in the sport of rabbit hunting. We'll learn about the history behind Stacy Mountain Outlaw Kennels and hear what it takes to win in the United Kennel Club's hunting Beagle Format. Now, I should tell you that Jeff Stacy is a good friend of mine that was instrumental in introducing me to the competition world of rabbit hunting. He was the very first, or one of the very first people I ever met at my very first hunt at Broad River Beagle Club in South Carolina. And before long, he helped me get my very first beagle. I've competition hunted with him, against him, and gun hunted with him for a number of years. Jeff always shares great stories about his old rabbit dogs from back in the day, and I wanted to ask him a little more about how he got started with beagles, the origins of the Stacy's Mountain Outlaw Kennels, learn his opinion on what it takes to compete in today's hunting beagle format, and generally speaking, see if we could extract some wisdom from this dog man. I want to welcome Jeff Stacy to the program. Jeff, tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been fooling around with these hounds.
Okay, I've actually been fooling around with hounds since I was about 10 years old. And, of course, I started out with coon hounds, like most people, it seems to be. And also done some gun hunting, rabbit hunting with my family, and when I was at a very young age. But I started owning coon hounds when I was about 10 and kept them for about 5 years. And, of course, that put me at 15. So, other things become more important than hounds. And kind of got out of it for a few years. And 1988, I decided to purchase my first beagle. And I had been hunting a little bit with a couple of my cousins. And my brother-in-law, Jerry Hicks, and I called Dad and said, hey, we want to buy a couple pups. We want to buy young pups. We want to start them. We're going to start gun hunting with these guys more and go from there. So, of course, Dad, he had the hookups, and so he called a preacher in West Virginia that ran a lot of AKC style dogs, which went back to the old gay bloodline, and actually had some real Hall of Fame dogs back in it. So my brother-in-law and I go up and buy one pup each, litter mates, and then we buy a third one as a partnership, and that's where it started, 1988.
Well, so just a couple of things. One, my dad always told me never to trust a preacher when you're buying dogs. So I'm amazed you started by finding a preacher to buy your first dogs from.
I probably wouldn't have if it hadn't been for my dad that knew this preacher all his life. And he felt like he had good dogs. And my dad was one you didn't tell a whole lot of stories to. So I didn't give it a second thought that he was a preacher. But when he took me in his house and he set us down and he started showing me all these bloodlines and Hall of Fame dogs, and on the AKC side, I was pretty intrigued, and one, we bought 3-month-old puppies. He took them, and he had a little running pen there on the hill above his house, turned them in the pen. We watched them run, and it was dark. It was at night. We had our flashlights, and we watched them run in that pen, and I'm like, well, they're 3 months old, and if they turn out bad, it's going to be on us, the trainers, because looking at all the pedigrees and listening to him, which was not a competition hunter, was just a gun hunter, but bred a lot of that style dog. it was up to me and my brother-in-law to either make good hounds out of these or make bad hounds out of them. And needless to say, they made very good hounds, and that's where we started.
Well, I've just got a couple of questions. When I think about some of the AKC dogs, do they come in two different sizes? I mean,
Yes.
So what size hounds did you start with?
Probably 13, 13 and a half. It's a little bigger. Most AKC hounds are judged as either a 15-inch hound or a 13-inch hound, you know. These hounds was between 13 and 13 and a half. They was not the big 15-inch hounds.
What did they look like? What colors were they?
We had, the one I bought was what I call the old style black blanket back. And, you know, had a brown on his head, tan head. You know, he was registered as black, tan, and white. His litter mate was a little lighter color and had a little more white, but he was a tricolor. And the partner dog that we bought was a cousin to the two litter mates, and he was a little more open marked. So, you know, you had all this blood there that's kin, but they did not look identical. You know, they had some of the same features, big blocky heads and stuff like that, but they didn't even have the same mouths. They was all each their own, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, a couple of things. One is, I bet some people don't realize that you coon hunted first. So did you competition coon hunt? Were you just a pleasure hunter?
When I was a kid, I was just a pleasure hunter.
Mm-hmm.
Me and my brother Jerry. I had the dog. You know, Dad got me a coon dog, a young dog. I actually hunted a black and tan and a red tip. And we did a lot of coon hunting with some older gentlemen that lived in the same hollow we did, that was real good friends with my dad. And back in them days, it was really hard to find a coon. And we treated a lot of possums. I ain't gonna lie about it. You know, we treated a lot of possums.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
And you know, it was a thrill as long as we treated. And I really love to hear. I still today love to hear a good tree dog. But I have competition coon hunted, but it was later on in my life when I was, you know, probably in my 30s, and you know, but not when I was a youngster. It was all pleasure hunting.
Okay, and so you started out with these first beagles, and you were just really gun hunting. I mean, that's what you were.
Yes, sir. We started out with them 3, and that was in 88, 89 roughly, and I didn't start competition hunting until 1994.
So with these first hounds that you had, as you were learning kind of your way around the beagle world, who helped you? I mean, who were your influencers? Who kind of took you under their arm, if anybody, or did you learn it yourself?
I feel like I learned more of it myself, me and my dad, and we started studying the hounds and what we had, and we'll get into more of that a little bit. But you know, my brother-in-law, he's hunting with me again tomorrow. You know, he was just about to hunt. You know, hey, my dog will run a rabbit, he'll run a deer, whatever. You know, he's about to kill. And then I started, you know, paying attention to dogs, and then some older gentlemen that live down here near me in North Carolina run the same style dog, maybe a tad slower. I started hanging out at a feed store, you know, and a guy by the name of Raymond McClure, and, you know, talking with him, and you know, he would tell me a lot about, you know, this area running in North Carolina versus, you know, things. So, you know, I would sit around and listen to a lot of old timers, and then I would go to the woods and see if that's true or that's not true. You know what I'm saying?
I love sitting around listening to old timers. There's a lot of wisdom in those in the old feed stores.
Yes, I learned a lot there, and you know, I learned a lot of BS too. You know, and but anyway, that's how. Probably in the early '90s, I was spending a lot of time, after I'd run in the mornings or whatever, when it wasn't gun season, and hang out and listen to these guys, because there's so many beagle hunters back in that day. They gun hunted hard, and after gun season, their dogs didn't get turned loose for another 8-9 months. But there was a few, like the gentleman I mentioned, that ran dogs, 3 to 4 times a week, sometimes 5. So them guys I trended more towards. They didn't just gun hunt; they run dogs, and they watched this, and I'd listen to what they liked, and what style and this and that. And of course, all of that changed in '94. But I still went and listened to the same group.
So you're having a good time. You have some success early on with your first hounds. You met some really good guys that are hunting dogs similar to what you enjoy. So what happened? What happened to introduce you to competition hunting?
Well, my 2 cousins that I said reason that I went and actually bought dogs, that I gun hunted with, and they hunted more grade dogs. They didn't buy the big pedigrees, and they didn't. One of them started competition hunting. So I went and bought my wife a grade beagle, because I knew he was getting into a faster footed dog than what we was running in gun hunting. So I went and bought this female, and as a puppy, and she didn't have no papers, but trained her, started her, and of course she was faster than the 3 or 4 I had. And one weekend, it was a family get together, whatever. He's like, come on, Jeff, you need to go to this competition hunt with me, and blah blah blah. I'm like, no, man, I'm just a gun hunter, and I enjoy running, and I run 6-7 days a week, and I said I enjoy it, love hearing my dogs, and but I ain't no competition hunter. So he worked the angle. He went to my wife and said, hey, your female is better than his dogs. That's why he don't want to go to the competition hunt. He don't want to win with your dog and not win with his. So then all of a sudden, I got somebody else on me. Oh, you need to go try it, blah, 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 Well, about a week goes by, and they was going to a hunt up in Carroll County, Virginia. And me and Mr. Bundy, which is one of our first members in our club, neither one of us had ever competition hunted. And like I said, we were running more medium speed dogs and this and that. But me and him decided to go with these guys field trial. Well, I go up there. The little female, she does a good job. I thought she did a real good job. I don't know. I get a 7th, 8th place trophy, something like that.
Okay.
And I'm walking on cloud 9. I won a trophy first time. And, this and that. So it kind of went from there. And the next week, my dad calls me. And he says, you ain't going to believe what I did today. And I'm like, what'd you do, Dad? Because he worked a lot, kind of like I have all my life. And he didn't get to hunt a lot with us, even as kids. Like I said, I hunted more with my uncles, cousins, stuff like that, and a lot of Dad's friends, because he worked all the time. He said, I come home from work today, and I stopped and bought 2 beagles.
Wow.
He said, y'all guys are enjoying it so much, I'm going to try this out. And I'm like, okay, what'd you buy? He bought 2 red tick beagles, a male and a female, grade dogs. He didn't buy papers and this and that. And he said, that I watched them run, jump a rabbit, and run, blah, blah, blah. He said, so bring your dogs this weekend, come to West Virginia, and let's see what we got. I'm like, okay. So I do. And, of course, again, his dogs had more foot than mine. And he said, what are you going to do next weekend? I said, well, I'm going to another competition hunt in Withville, Virginia. I'll meet you there. I said, okay. you come and we'll hunt your two dogs, because I already see you got more foot than I got. And from what they're running in the trials, is a little more footier, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of where it all started. Me and Dad met, and he met there at that hunt, and he ran the female and I ran the male, and I think he got 8th place and I got 9th place. And them's the only 2 trophies he ever kept in his house, his
Wow.
whole competitive life. But that started it for him, and he enjoyed it. And at the time, I was just going by Stacy's Outlaw Kennels. You know, the mountain wasn't in there. And I know you said we would get into that later, and I'll tell you how that led about, you know.
Well, Jeff, this is a good spot, and I should have done this earlier, but for folks that maybe haven't competition hunted before, could you just maybe go over how dogs are judged? You know, how do they earn points? Just on a real high level, nothing with a lot of detail, but how you score them, basically.
Yeah, and this was what I was taught in a week, and you know, I'm not the main highlights, and it's what I try to teach everyone that's new coming to a hunt today, at least the first time. One is, you know, when your dog barks, you can strike your dog on the first bark or the third bark. So number one, you need to know your dog's voice, and you know, if you want to wait till it barks 3 times, you can. Back in that day, if you waited to the 4th, you was going to the truck. You was scratched. Now, things has changed over all the years. Like I said, this is in 94. So one thing I learned was, okay, I strike my dog.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing, my cousin and them guys taught me, we was just out pleasure running. Okay, it's just like if we was going to shoot it. We want the dogs to run the rabbit a circle, take it out, turn it, bring it back, and we get in position like you would shoot it, but we have no guns, so we call what they call a line. And you know, the strike positions, you got 4 dog casts. You know, most standard is 4 dog casts. You get back then you got 100 for first, 75 for second, 50 for third, 25 for fourth. So once you strike it, rabbit's up and running, and you get in position like you would if you was going to shoot it, but you call a line. And you say, okay, the rabbit went by that pine tree right there. So the judge and the majority of the cast, which is at least 3 out of 4 people, and one of them has to be the judge, has to be there when the dogs come through to score. Okay, when the first dog scores, he gets 100. The other dogs have 1 minute to come through that invisible line you've drawn by that pine bush. And the second dog gets 85, third dog gets 70, fourth dog gets 55. And you can actually circle and run that rabbit 3 times and score what we call speed and drive 3 times. Once it's scored the 3rd time, you pick the 4 dogs up, because we don't want to kill the rabbit or run it till we catch it. Nothing like that. Then you go and try to, you know, dogs hunt another rabbit. You don't hunt for them, they have to hunt. The biggest thing is dog has to hunt, you got to know its mouth and get in position to score. And then the check thing comes in to where if all dogs go silent for 1 minute, they call it what they call is a check. And the first dog that opens within the next 2 minutes, because you run a 3-minute clock, it was 5 minutes back in 94. But the first dog that opens, that moves that track, and the pack falls in with it, gets rewarded a recovery. So, you know, you could have several of them in a 3-round chase. But if they're down for any 3-minute period, or 5 minutes back in 94, you handled the dogs. If they were out in the open, they would take a minus, which would take points away. If it went up in a hole, it would be, if you'd seen the rabbit or the majority at it and you scored it, everything would be plus. If you hadn't, it would be circle. And, that was the first things I learned was the scoring. And number one, knowing when to strike my dog. Because 90% of the judges, when you get ready to score a line, I tell you go over there and look or get here when we score. But the main thing was learning to strike your dog, knowing your dog's mouth, and get in position with the judges to score.
Perfect. I think that's a really good general overview of how these field trials work. And we're talking in particular, the format that we're talking about right now is the United Kennel Club's hunting beagle format. So
Correct.
there's other registries, and the rules may vary a little bit from registry to registry, but we're kind of focusing on UKC right now. So thank you for that. So for the folks that maybe have never been to a competition hunt, know your dog, know how to strike it, know its voice. And,
that's number one.
That's number one. But well, let's get more into the name. So your dad surprised you with getting a couple red tick beagles, and you had some early success, and now you're starting to carry the Outlaw name. So how did that happen?
Well, after Dad got his two beagles, and like I said, I was just carrying the bloodline of the pups that I bought was Outlaw bred, which carried a big name all the way back in the 70s and 80s in ATC. So I didn't want to ride the coattail, even though I had Stacy's on the front of it, of the Outlaw name. So Dad and I decided to become partners. Mm-hmm. And, whatever dogs he had was mine. Whatever dogs I had was his. We was all going to become one. And I'm like, okay, Dad lives in the mountains of West Virginia. So we're going to we're going to make our new kennel name, Stacy's Mountain Outlaw Kennels with an S, because it was two of us. Mm-hmm. Because in the beginning, like I said, the mountain wasn't there and the S wasn't there. It was just me by myself, which was only a year. The next year, if you go back and look at my hounds that was registered in the early 90s, it was Stacy's Outlaw Thunder was my first hound, and blah, blah, blah. But everything from time Dad and I joined with the red ticks, it became Stacy's Mountain Outlaw, whatever. And that started in 94. And was the best decision I ever made in my life. And we spent many, many years running these hounds and grading these hounds. And Dad started liking the competition and stuff. And, he was in his coal mining career. And for all the years that we didn't get a hunt together when I was growing up, suddenly changed to where we was meeting every weekend in hunting and holidays and when he wasn't working and stuff like that. So we was spending a lot of time in the woods with our hounds.
Well, Jeff, just the way it's set up, you go out with 4 different hounds. 3 of you are going to lose.
Yep.
You're only going to have one person in there winning. So what hooked you in the beginning? Because it sounds like you had some early success, but was there a particular hound or hounds, that really got you and your dad both hooked on this thing and maybe, just got you kind of the foundation of stock of where you are today?
Well, we met a lot of good people in Virginia, made good friends, still friends today. And, a lot of people, about everybody was so friendly. It was enjoyable. But it took about a year, and Dad called me up, and he said, son, you really like this competition? And I like, yeah, sure do. And he said, I do too. He said, but there's a problem. And I said, okay, Dad, what's the problem? He said, well, we're getting these little trophies and these little ribbons, every weekend, 8th, 9th, 10th, 7th, 6th, whatever. He said, we need to do a couple things. I want you to think about it. He said, number one, I want you to think that I've never done anything in my life and just be a participant or loser. He said, if we can't win, we need to get out of it and just enjoy our pleasure hunting. He said, but we needed to decide why we're not winning. He said, so number one, and I still encourage people to this today. He was so right. He said, number one, we get patted on the back every weekend. Oh, y'all guys got good dogs. We really enjoy it. But we're not winning them first places. We're not in that top 4. But these pats on the backs don't count. That's just the way Dad was. He said, so one, we need to figure out, we need to get in the rule book instead of listening to what everybody else tells us the rules is. And I encourage every young hunter to do that today. Sit down, read the rule book, take a scorecard to the woods with you, practice. Ask questions. There's nothing wrong with asking questions. Well, we was just going out there in the first year, the good old boys getting patted on the back, blah, blah, blah. Really wasn't studying, just kind of believing whatever you was told.
Right.
And Dad being a lot older than me, 16 years, 17 years older than me, he was like, I know we got pretty good dogs, but we need to study. Number one, I studied a book. I studied the rules and decide if we're being judged right or are we kind of being taken advantage of? The good old boy pat on the back. I said, okay. He said, number two, we need to watch our hounds. We've seen enough other people's hounds in the last year. Do you think our hounds are as good, or do we need to change to get better? And he said, we need to study that. The next 3 or 4 hunts, we need to study that. Number one, if we're being dealt straight up and down, then we don't have the dog power. We need to do something different. And he said, don't worry about it. We'll breathe by whatever we got to do to compete if you want to stay in this. But we're not going to continue just to be patted on the back. And so anyway, we started studying. We started calling each other every night. He might be in the woods in West Virginia. I'm in the woods in North Carolina. Okay, this just happened. How would we score it? Reading through the rule book. I mean, this become every night, 7 days a week.
Wow.
Questions for each other. So in 1996, we started Randolph County Beagle Club. 2 years after we had hunted maybe 5 to 6 hunts. We met a field rep in Virginia. Oh, he wanted to start a Beagle Club in North Carolina. So we started a Beagle Club with, my brother-in-law, my dad, Mr. Ronald Bundy, my sister, my oldest sister, and a few more friends. And he's like, okay, we need to really focus because we want people to come to this club and say they've been treated very good, very fair, judged correctly, not just because they may not know the rules or whatever. If they've got the better dog, they need to win. As long as they're striking their dog back to the original. Now, we can't help it if they don't strike their dog or whatever. So anyway, that's where it all started. And we become quickly known that we didn't know the rules, number one, again. And our goal was, okay, not to be bad or mean with anyone, but to say, whoa, that's not right. Dad said, I want a rule book in your pocket every time you go to the field. And if you see something or you don't understand it, pull it out and ask the judge. Show me why this was scored that way.
Right.
Or how it was scored that way. And I still encourage people to do that today. And his second encouragement was he always carried them as a manager in the coal mines. a little old, he called them a scratch pad, but it's a little
Mm-hmm.
old notebook that goes in your pocket.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Carry your scratch pad, write your scores down. Because how do you know when you come back and sign the scorecard that they didn't write you down for fourth and you were second? Are you really looking at it good enough to know? No, you're just looking at the totals and signing it. Okay, I got second or third in the cast. And he was right. So once you start doing that, people's like, oh, why you got a scorecard in your pocket? Why you got a scratch pad in your pocket?
Right.
Well, no ill will. I'm just keeping up. I'm learning. And when you say that word, I'm learning, it gets attention.
I got you.
Well, it didn't last 3 months to they started putting the scorecard in our hands. And and it went from there because they're like, okay, these guys are they're on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we still had the same hounds, but we went and bought a blue tick female, AKC registered, that had a lot more foot and had a ton of hunt than had a lot more foot than anything we owned.
And what was her name?
Her name was Mullins Blue Brandy.
Okay.
She was AKC registered. So we take Mullins Blue Brandy and we breed her to my original blanket back, my first Beagle, Thunder.
Mm-hmm.
And, we start producing puppies from there, which was a little faster.
Mm-hmm.
Thunder and her both had a ton of hunt. He could run with her, but he couldn't outrun her. And she was an excellent jump dog. Both of them was, but she would just win on speed. So she was our first UKC field champion.
Wow.
And we kept her to the day she passed, 11 years old. And shortly after that, Dad goes and buys a big male out of Ohio, which was Bronco bred,
Mm-hmm.
which Bronco's got a huge name out of Canada. He calls me up and he says, Jeff, my neighbor's got two pups out of Ohio that originated out of Canada. He said they're 15-inch hounds. This male was 6 months old and he blisters everything we got. And he said, I'm going to buy him.
Wow.
I said, okay, let's do it. That was our second UKC champion. His name was Stacy's Mountain Outlaw Mickey.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started breeding him to the blue tick brandy dog, our first champion.
Mm-hmm.
And really started throwing some bigger hounds with a lot more foot and still all the tremendous hunt. It was always, hunt was number one. Foot become number two, and then the true mouth was number three because you always had some dogs open quicker than the other. And we seen in competition, especially in the South, you got to have a tighter dog. Not that my old Thunder dog wouldn't jump your rabbit. I remember several times I'd say, Dad, I got to get him off that track. He's driving me crazy. You leave him alone. It might be 5-6 minutes. All of a sudden, he'd roll a rabbit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
To where, but he wasn't beating the time clock. I'm getting this competition brain. He's like, Thunder's a rabbit dog. You need to leave him alone. And he'll get you a rabbit. But after we started breeding Mickey and Brandy, we started getting what I call more true mouth dogs that we didn't breed the nose out of them or the brains, but we bred a lot of the extra barking out of them.
Mm-hmm.
And when they opened, you could bet it was a rabbit roller.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started winning consistently. And he said, this is what we got to do. We got to breed these kinds of hounds. I know Thunder's your first hound. My two red ticks was my first hounds. We're not going to get rid of them. They'll be here till they pass, and they was. But now we're breeding better dogs,
Mm-hmm.
And then the big story came right after that.
What's the big story? Thank you for listening to part 1 of our 2-part interview with Jeff Stacy. Remember to like us and subscribe if you want to be notified when new episodes are released. Also, you can email your comments and or suggestions for future content to buffintherough@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening. I hope you join us next time to answer the question, what's the big story? In part 2 of our interview with the outlaw, Jeff Stacy.